Hello guys, today we are going to be looking at the Cyclops Gambit. Now, since you never heard of this, you may be wondering, is this yet another dumb gambit made by Adamisco, or is this a fun opening where you get to sacrifice to punish your opponent's normal looking moves? The answer is yes. To get this on the board, you need to face the e4 opening, to which you respond with d5. And here, your opponent needs to decline the pawn by playing this wild move, knight to c3. This is the fourth most played move here, and we are simply going to continue by poking the knight. Usually it goes to e2. Now in the past I had some problems in these lines and these variations, and I usually got into some trouble, because white is going for some sort of traps of their own. That's why I sat down and I analyzed these variations, and this is the solution that I came up with. Here we are going to simply continue by poking them right in the eye with pawn to d3. Now it's not the most correct move, but most guys are going to grab this pawn, and probably they are hoping for us to recapture with the queen, which would actually be a blunder, and it is the most played move. So don't do that. We are from now on going to simply treat this position as a gambit, and we are going to be focusing on the development. So pawn to e5 opens door for our dark square bishop, and already here the two most played moves are knight to c3 and knight to g3, and both of them hands the advantage to black pieces. So I would like to branch it out in this position, and let's start by looking at what happens after knight to c3. Well, we are going to continue with knight to c6. Here knight to f3 is the usual response, and now knight to e7. This is important because most guys are going to go for a natural knight to f6, but knight to e7 is the correct way to approach this position, because in the long run we would like to go knight to g6 and eventually knight to f4. And if we manage to get our knights on f4 and d4, in that position we would be almost like winning and have great winning chances. You will see that later. Alright, so here there is only like a handful of games in this position on the Lichess database, but I would just assume the most common line for white would be to play bishop to e2 and get castled short. So let's see that. Later we will have a look at also if white chooses to go for this light square bishop Fianchetto. So now bishop to e2, we are simply going to go knight to g6, they get castled, and we can develop our bishop to c5 with the usual square. And in this position, the handful of games that are on the Lichess database have one thing in common, and that is white is now going to be trying to harass our bishop because they hate him. I don't know why. And the most played move is knight to a4, harassing the bishop, and then the second most played variation is with pawn to a3 followed up with pawn to b4. Both of these harassing plans are not going to be working well for white. So let's first start with pawn to a3. Here we can continue with developing bishop to e6. And if they wish to continue with b4, they can. But here we are going to already surprise them by not even addressing to their threat, but rather just playing knight to d4. And if they wish, they can even capture the bishop, and here we can make their queen dance for us with bishop to b3. So as you can see, the queen has only this square, which can be then harassed with our knight from c2. So the queen has to go back. By the way, the engine is recommending to give up the queen already, because this way we just get to eat this rook for free. Now the queen is hit once again from the bishop, so it just shuffles around like this. And in this position it is like already -5 for black. We have the prospects of landing our knight on f4 and just going for a quick kill. Okay, let's go back. Let's see the other strategy of theirs to go knight to a4. So if they play this, you can just simply go bishop to d4. And now I can assure you they will very happily capture the bishop, because that's their life goal, to capture your dark square bishop. And actually it is a blunder, because now you get your knight on d4, and there is one game in the Lichess database, and it continued with a knight back to c3, trying to reactivate the knight because it was just doing nothing on the rim of the board. But of course you can now jump knight to f4, and you can demonstrate them the power of two outposted knights. So what can they do here? Because you are already winning. Let's say they will try to harass the knight away. Well, you can capture the bishop, knight recaptures, and now bishop to g4, pinning the knight. The knight is being hit twice, so I don't know, let's say they will try to protect it with the rook and just get hit with knight to f3, check, fork. End of the story. Let's go back. So what if they don't play this knight back to c3? Well, one of the moves that Stockfish is recommending is to push pawn to g3, trying to stop us from going knight to f4. But in this position we can play bishop to h3, hitting the rook, so let's say they move it out of the way, and now queen to g5. With this move we are now once again able to go knight to f4, because the pawn is now pinned to the king. And actually there is no way for white to stop this idea. Well, there is there is king to h1 unpinning, but we can still go knight to f4, and they cannot capture this because of checkmate. Alright, well, in these variations, after they captured the bishop on d4, everything is just winning for black, and I will elaborate on this variation in the Lichess study, because there is just too many moves that white could possibly try to hold on. So now let's just go back and let's discuss the other move. So not playing bishop to e2 here, but going for the light square bishop Fianchetto. Well, in this case we are going to play pawn to h5, a typical operation to play against these Fianchetto bishops. And if white proceeds to go for his plan, we can push pawn to h4. And well, looks like a free pawn here, so I believe most guys will just capture it with the knight. But here we have this nice and sound rook sacrifice, and the rook captures the knight. Once they recapture, we are going to now play knight to g6, and well, this pawn is hanging and there is no good way for white to protect it, so it may just occur to them that pushing the pawn is a good idea. Well, if they do this, we can go knight to f4. We are hitting the bishop, we are hitting this pawn, and actually there is only one good way for white to protect both of these pieces, and they need to go bishop to f1. And after that we are going to go queen to h4. This move seems like it doesn't come with a clear threat, but yeah, there is a big threat. And it's kind of hard to spot, but with this move we are preparing bishop to g5. And if we manage to play this move, so let's say white doesn't address this threat and just play some, I don't know, pawn to b3, trying to develop something, well, bishop to g5 is so strong that the engine is just recommending to not even move the queen and lose it and play some other survivalistic move. So this is how tricky this variation can be. Let's go back. So how about they don't push this pawn? Let's say they get castled. Well, getting castled is only for the brave, because after this it gets even trickier. First of all, we are going to capture this pawn, And now white needs to play king to h1, because if they play just some kind of random move, let's stick with pawn to b3, queen to g5 is actually a forced checkmate. Well, right now the checkmate threat is this, and the only way to prevent and prolong the game is to play queen to f3, which we can capture with check. The king moves, now queen to f4, threatening this checkmate, so they need to capture the horse. We capture with check, and now bishop to h3 comes with an unstoppable checkmate threat. Alright, let's go back all the way to the point where I said we are going to be branching out, and that was this move, knight to c3. The second most popular move here is knight to g3. We are still going to continue with knight to c6. Now knight to f3 is the most played move, and in this variation we are going to continue with bishop to g4, hitting the knight, pinning it to the queen. And there are two moves I would like to consider. It is pawn to h3 or bishop to e2. So let's start with pawn to h3. We are going to exchange like this. And now after knight to d4, we are sending the queen right back to its home square, because otherwise we are threatening this fork. Okay, now we can continue with our typical knight to e7. Let's say they play bishop to e2 and try to get castled. Well, it's totally fine for us actually. Here, after knight to g6, getting castled is already losing. Okay, because, well, we can right away land our knight on f4 square. And what is white going to do here? Well, they have some development issues, like for example this bishop. It's just stuck. So let's say they will try to elaborate the bishop by playing pawn to b3. Well, we can continue with queen to g5. It was an unstoppable move, and it comes with a deadly threat. So for example, if white just continues with developing the bishop, here we can just capture this light square bishop, and they cannot capture back, because, well, the knight is pinned, otherwise it is a checkmate. And of course, if queen takes, then it's a free queen for knight. So that's why in this position they would have to play the only move, bishop to f3. Then we can just finish our development with getting long castled. They can finish the development of their bishop, and bishop to c5, just getting our pieces ready in their positions to launch a devastating attack. And as I mentioned, the whole time we are in a winning position, but let's just see this one line where white goes wrong with a normal looking move, rook to c1, going for the bishop, also, you know, aiming for our king. Nice alignment, looks like a solid move, but is a blunder, because we can unleash knight captures on f3 with check. So queen captures, and now rook captures on d3, hitting the queen. And the queen, if it just tries to move away, then also this knight is hanging, because we can utilize this spin. And this position is like a forced checkmate. The better solution for white would be to try to trade queens, but it is still like -5. Okay, let's go back. Now let's see the other move, and that is not pawn to h3, but playing bishop to e2. In this case, I would recommend you to continue with this quiet move, pawn to g6. It may appear as we are trying to fianchetto our bishop, but little do they know that this move has other purposes, and mainly we want to restrict this knight from accessing the f5 square. So here I believe like the majority of our opponents will just get castled, and here we can start attacking with h5. I believe in this position people would be trying to harass our bishop away with pawn to h3, but we are still just continuing the march with the pawn h4, hitting the knight. Now it seems like it is dangerous for them to capture the bishop and let us capture the knight and have our rook wide open on this h file, but this is actually the better way to continue for white, because the other move is that they will try to, retreat the knight. The only square is h1. That's why this pawn push was useful in the beginning. Now we can continue with trading these pieces and going knight to f6. This time we go knight to f6 because it's important to take away this square from this bishop. And here, like, what is white going to do? Look at this position. This pawn is hanging. If they try to hold on to it by developing the queen here or here, you can always go knight to d4 and harass the queen away, and that would be like winning for black. And other than that, well, this knight cannot move anywhere, this bishop cannot move anywhere, so what's their game plan? I only assume that they will try to, free the dark square bishop and they will go for b3, but in this case you hit them with queen to d4, hitting this rook, so they need to move it. Now you capture the d3 pawn, because it comes with a tempo on the rook again. So they develop their bishop to protect their rook like this, but you can simply get long castled and you are just in such a dominant position. This is hanging, and they are playing essentially without this knight. So this is winning for black. And now let's go back and let's discuss the other option. So after pawn to h4, what if they decide to exchange the pieces like this? So the stockfish is saying that this is the way to go for white, but this is just so much trick here. For example, they cannot capture this pawn because not only they get themselves a triple g pawn, but also a losing position thanks to the bishop to c5 check. Yes, they can block this with the pawn, but we can capture with the knight, and now we are threatening to capture on f3 with a double checkmate. Yeah, and if they capture the knight, then queen recaptures and it is a checkmate anyways, like this. So they cannot capture the pawn. The engine is actually saying that the only move to survive for them is to play queen to a4. So let's see this. Queen to a4. Once again, we bring our bishop to c5. And now, well, if they try to block it like this, here we capture with the bishop. And this is one of a poisoned bishop, because I believe their hands will be itching to capture it like this. But if they do, then you go full nuts with rook to h1 check. They have to capture the rook. And now queen to h4 check, follow up this checkmate. Alright guys, I think I had enough fun making this video. I hope you liked this. I hope you learned something. Stay safe, take care, have fun, and bye.